Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball in the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today we have a complete full house, well, almost. We have Drew Barton, the Bay Area Bomber. We have the Shot Doctor, Ayab Booney. We have Jake Kopstick, who doesn't like my nicknames for him. And we have a new participant, Jackson Inagi, who may want to introduce himself. Jackson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't really know what to talk about, but hey, I'm just new to the podcast. Currently a college student and worked with my university's basketball team manager. That's my experience playing in high school, but excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you're at Cal Poly, right?
Yeah, Cal Poly. If anyone knows this is.
And they're a Big West school, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Big West.
Right. And the only person missing is Cam Reel. And the reason why we have so many people is for our next 4 episodes, we are going to be doing a mock draft. Today, we're going to cover the lottery, and then we're going to do about 15 picks per each for the next 3 episodes, and including some undrafted free agents when we get to the very end. So basically, we each assigned a certain number of teams, and I was assigned the Spurs. So I have pick number 1, and I'm going to shock you guys. I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama. Now, I have to say that I am not enamored like most people talk about him. But we'll get to that in a little bit. In the regular season during the French League, by the way, he is still actively playing. He's taken his team all the way to the French Championship. Last year, he also won championship with the team that he just defeated, Asvel, but he switched teams. Now he's playing for Met 92, and they will face Monaco in the finals starting tomorrow. But this year, during the regular season, he led the French League in points per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, and their player efficiency rating, which I think differs somewhat from ours, but is roughly similar. He was 16th for plus minus, and interestingly enough, his teammate Bilal Coulibaly was right behind him at 17. But I'll go over some of his numbers, and this would include what he's done in the playoffs so far. For this year, he has played in 41 games. He's averaged 21 points per game. He shot 47% from the floor. He's taking about 5 threes a game, shooting 28%. He's taking about 6 free throws a game, shooting 81%. He's averaging 10.5 rebounds, most of them on the defensive side. He's also averaging 2.4 assists, 0.8 steals, and 3 blocks per game. So as I studied him this year, and I've had him on top of our draft board all year, but the question, and I'm going to throw it out to you when I get all done, I don't see a heck of a lot of difference between him and Chet Holmgren. They both have unique size, or a unique combination of size and length and coordination and skill. And he certainly has guard-like skills, but he definitely will never be confused, at least not at this stage, with a guard. And in my estimation, he actually tries to play at times too much like a guard and not enough like a 7'3" center, which he is. By the way, his measurements 7'3", 210, only 210, 8 feet wingspan, 19 years old. He's also a right-hander. His jump shot is very promising, and he can shoot it off dribble moves. He's excellent from mid-range, but most of his threes, or where he's best, is either from mid-range, like inside 17 feet, 17 feet to the 3-point line, or when he's unguarded on the catch and shoot. But overall, as I said, he's made only 33% of his jump shots on the season, which isn't very good. That's 37 percentile. And of course, I said, 28% from deep. At the rim, overall, 90th percentile, and he dunks a lot. He's already had 109 dunks out of his 186 shots at the rim. That's 59% of his shots at the rim are dunks. But when you look at his other ways to finish, he doesn't do very good with layups. He, as a big, misses a lot of bunnies. And a part of that, I think, is because he's just not physical enough. He doesn't play with physicality. He doesn't play with aggression, at least enough. And he doesn't really have a post game either. He's pretty good in the pick and roll, but he likes to pop more than he likes to roll. So again, not necessarily taking advantage of his length and strength. He's very good in ISO as a big, 65th percentile. And defensively, if part of this makes me wonder about the schemes that they play, because he is often, you'll see him not get too far away from the paint. And that usually leaves somebody wide open for a shot. And I don't know if they do this by design. They just say, I'd rather have you leave, your guy open. Now, of course, the defense usually dictates who that guy is. So they usually switch on it, and when he switched, he could get switched on a mismatch, and he's always or often, very often, helping in the paint, trying to protect the rim, and that will leave a shooter wide open, and he often doesn't get out to that guy in time. So I don't know if this is by design or if this is the way he plays. I will say that he does lack some awareness, because if you're watching the game, and you're watching from above and you can see all 10 guys, if you were the opponent, it's clear where the ball should go. Wembayama's man is standing alone at the 3-point line. Get it out to him. And a lot of times the opponent does, and the guy sinks the shot. And he just doesn't seem to react quick enough. And I think that's a lack of awareness, that he spends a lot of time watching the ball, worrying about protecting the rim, and just kind of ignores his guy. He's a really good rebounder, but another problem I have with him, he doesn't get a lot of offensive rebounds. And part of that is because he likes to play on the perimeter. So he's not always in position to get the rebound. And again, he's not really an aggressive rebounder. Usually the rebounds he gets come right to him. He's not one of these guys like Dennis Rodman. You see him scrambling all over the floor for a rebound. It's like it's either in his area or he doesn't get it. Of course, his area is pretty long with an 8-foot wingspan. So, and the other problem I have, and this goes with any kind of unicorn guy, at 7'3", you're so far off the ground, and it is so easy for people to get underneath you and steal the ball. And his handle, if you watch him enough, if you watch highlights, okay, you're going to be wowed. But if you watch him, game after game, you're going to see he often gets his pocket picked, because little guys come up from behind him, or his spin moves. He's always turning the ball over on his spin moves. The ball gets way too far away from his body, and guards just swipe it and go the other direction. So, I think he needs to get more physical. I think he needs to take better advantage of his height. I think he should focus on those things before he focuses on, improving his handle and improving his jump shot. And the other thing I've noticed in the French playoffs is he's really not the go-to guy. He's one of their primary scorers and probably their leading scorer, but like when it's crunch time, you can't get the ball to him in the post and count on a basket. You can't get the ball to him on the perimeter and count on a basket. And a lot of times, Koulibaly is the guy who has the ball in his hands at crunch time. And so, yeah, there you go. I just don't know. I mean, depending on how you feel about Chet Holmgren and his upside is probably where, I would think you should be putting Wembayama too. So Chet was the number 3 overall pick. Maybe Wembayama, I guess, is a little bigger. But in terms of having those unicorn-like skills, again, one of these guys, if you watch the highlights, yeah, jaw dropping. But if you watch him game in, game out, not so jaw dropping. So, what do you guys think of my evaluation? Because a lot of people love this guy, think he's, transcended generational players, they call them. A generational player to me is like Luka. When I watched Luka in Europe, I was like, whoa, I'm not so much with Wembayama.
Rich, I 100% agree with you. It was interesting, to be honest. I haven't seen Wembayama or Scoot Henderson play prior to about the last 3 weeks, month, where I decided to do a deep dive on them, watch about each of them, about 10 of their games. And what was interesting, what you said with regard to his stats, is after I noticed after watching about 10 games, like, he can't shoot it. He's not a very good shooter.
Not yet, no.
And he's given a lot of space to shoot the ball in those games.
From the 3-point line. Now he is pretty deadly, from the mid-range, like on his turnaround, and stuff like that.
There's not a lot of pressure on him. I mean, he's getting what he wants and that type of thing. Right. Pressure on him. There's a man there, but they're not really bothering his shot.
Yeah, they let him shoot threes.
If Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembayama switch positions, meaning if Chet Holmgren played for this French team, they'd be talking about Chet Holmgren as he was a generational player. I think, I'm going to say it, I think Victor Wembayama is going to be a bust. I don't think he has it. And for him being called a unicorn and generational comes off just from what league he's playing for and who he is playing against. I think as an NBA exec, you got to pick him number 1. Everyone has him going number 1, but I don't think he's. I think there's 15 guys in the draft that are going to end up being better pros than him. Sure, he finishes at the rim, he dunks the ball, he blocks shots, but you know who else does that? Derek Lively. I'm not a Wembayama guy.
Yeah, somebody said that Wembayama was the best shot blocker in this draft class, and I was like, I'm not so sure about that. I think Derek Lively, would give him a run for his money, and might be better. His I put it in here. His block percentage. Where did I put it? It wasn't. It wasn't great. It's 9.7. So there were a lot of guys in college basketball that have a block percentage higher than 9.7, probably at least 10. I don't know if Lively is one of them, but in terms of competition, he is playing competition higher than any college player. French league is just a notch below the Spanish league, which is a notch below EuroLeague. So you can't question the competition. He's playing against professionals that are getting paid good money, and it's on par, with the G League in terms of talent. So, so it's much better than college. And it all depends, and I think Drew is going to have a comment on. All depends on what you define as a bust, because to me, right, I'm going to let you run with that, Drew. But for me, my projection is, he's going to be an all-star. I think he's going to be a multi-year all-star. I just don't know if he's going to be. I don't think he's as good as Luka, and he's not the best European prospect I've ever seen.
Yeah, Rich, I know you and I kind of had an exchange about this the other day because we both were talking about Bilal, his teammate, and Victor. And I just think that, and we kind of saw it. It's been going on for years. It was a big thing with Zion. Zion's generational. I mean, he missed, I think, like 60% of his games. Anyways, the problem we have with Bust is I do think Victor's going to be a serviceable NBA player. And yes, I think all-stars are very reasonable. And probably some all-NBA, might be an all-defensive guy if he puts, like, there's no question that he has the tools and the potential to do that. The problem is there's these talk shows and these media members that are coming out, and I believe it was Chris Broussard on the air said, if he's Dirk Nowitzki or Hakeem Olajuwon, I view him as a bust given the hype put around him. I just thought to myself that not even Hakeem, who is probably really a top 10 player of all time, it's very, very, very arguable. You have Dirk Nowitzki's career where he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, a 14-time All-Star, a 10 plus 14-time whatever it is All-NBA guy.
He's not Dirk. Though
50, 40, 90
he
guy.
He might be better defensively.
Sure, but it's like just looking at the career arc, you're telling me that if Victor goes on to win an NBA championship, be a Finals MVP, win a league MVP, be a double-digit All-Star, double-digit All-NBA guy, have a 50, 40, 90 season under his belt, he will probably be better defensively. You're going to call that a bust? Like, what are we doing? If I looked into a crystal ball and I saw any player was going to have the career arc of Dirk Nowitzki, he's the first overall pick in almost any draft ever. Ever. I mean, there's other players, obviously, but like for the most part, in most drafts, he's probably the first, at worst, the second pick overall in those drafts. And so I just think that it's absurd. I agree. I haven't seen too much of Victor, but having to go back and watch other film for other players, I just think that it's highlight culture has gotten to the point where the one great play is all we talk about and not the fact that there's another 100 possessions. He should be the first overall pick. He's first on my board, but I think we need to temper expectations just a little bit.
Let me define what I consider a bust with Wembanyama. I think in 6 years, he'll be exactly where James Wiseman is. I don't see him as an All-NBA. I don't see him as an All-Star. I see him in the league for multi number of leagues, jumping around teams. That's how highly I think of Wembanyama.
Wow. I don't think it's that bad. I will say this. This is the one stat that really shocked me about him. He's only made 54% of his layups this year. He's 7'3" and has an 8-foot wingspan, and he's only made 54% of his layups. Do you know what that puts him in percentile-wise? 32nd percentile. A 7'3" guy with an 8-foot wingspan only made 54% of his layups. Now, I think part of that is because he thinks this is the Joel Embiid thing all over again. Wembanyama wants to play like a guard, and even KP, wants to play like a guard. And all these guys all these 7-footers want to play like a guard, and you can't play like a guard because you're 7 foot tall, and people are going to pick your pocket all the time. It's just, and yeah. So he's got to get closer to the rim. He's got to get that mindset out of his head, and then and shoot an occasional three when he's open. And like his turnaround game is nice in the post. I like that, but what I still want to see him take it to the rim and jam it. Jam it, damn it. All right. Do we have anything more before we move on to pick number 2? All right. We'll move on to pick number 2, and that's Jackson. He's picking for the Charlotte Hornets. Who do you got, Jackson?
Right. So I had the Hornets taking Brandon Miller second. I did consider Scoop, but just for the team fit and for I think talent-wise as well. I do think that Scoop, I like him more as a prospect than Brandon Miller, but they're not. The distance between them is not enough for the Hornets to pass on someone who fits with the team, especially with their need for a wing, a shooter. So I have here, he's obviously the biggest strength is perimeter shooting. Shot 38 from the 3, only 43 from the field, which I'll get into a little later with finishing at the rim. But one of the things that really stood out to me was his playmaking ability. He's really good out of the pick and roll for a big, and he made a lot of high-level passes with both hands out of the pick and roll. And I think he showed that ability to make the skip pass and make the right decision more often than not. Obviously, he wasn't the lead ball handler for Alabama, but just showing those glimpses of secondary ball handling to complement LaMelo, I think that will really help the Hornets. And obviously his defensive potential as well. He 6'9", 6'11" wingspan, so he has good measurements, and I think he's pretty good laterally. Not the quickest, I would say, but still shows effort. I think he should be able to match up pretty well with multiple positions. Once he adds a little more strength, I think he'll be able to play more small ball four, defending the post. But as far as improvements, I saw like he did struggle with against more like elite players getting off the dribble separation. He did get to the rim a lot easier as the season went on. Of course, he was a little injured, banged up by the end of the season, March Madness. But yeah, when they played a little more elite athleticism and competition, I did see that he was kind of struggling handle-wise to get around people or even just to separate in his jump shot. And then also for finishing at the rim, he only shot 54% at the rim and 47% on layups overall. So it was more so like this early season and late in the season with his injury. But in the middle of the season, he did show improvement, finishing at the rim a lot easier. But I think also just adding that strength, being able to convert at the rim consistently. He's a very skilled player, but I think being able to finish more in contact, and I think that's one of his biggest needs is just that strength. And then overall, I think that his ceiling is that of an all-star player. But also I think he has a high floor. So I don't think he'll, even if he bottoms out, he'll be a starting caliber wing because he can shoot the ball well and he has good size and he has a good, he plays hard defense. So I think it's good.
I'm thinking at a minimum, he's going to be like a Michael Porter-like guy.
Right.
That's exactly. That's 100% Rich. Just let's think three.
Yeah, I do think he plays a little like better defense because he did show a little like more.
I think he's.
I would say effort. Yeah,
a
little more solid on defense.
Yeah, Michael Porter is. He's a little ditzy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Michael Porter, defense has never been his strong suit.
Yeah, on the ball as well, though. Like when I was watching, I didn't realize that Brandon Miller had that capability. It did seem like he was more playmaker wise. He did have the ability to do stuff as a secondary one, not like the lead ball handler on the team. But he did make a lot of impressive passes that I saw just working out of the pick and roll.
Right. Yeah, he also had a high turnover rate in the pick and roll, which actually brought down his efficiency a lot. So I don't know which games you're watching, but he did have. I wrote down here. He had 27% turnover rate in the pick and roll. But yeah, so I think playmaking is something he can work on. But he definitely showed that he could be. A lot of times he was the primary ball handler for that team. But yeah, I think finishing at the rim is a concern. You know, Cam on yesterday's show brought up an interesting point. He thought that Scoot wouldn't be a bad fit for Charlotte because he thought LaMelo might be better off playing off the ball. Any opinions there?
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought his assessment was right on with that, and I thought that would be a real good fit if Charlotte decides to go that route.
Yeah, I mean, on our mock draft on the site, I have Brandon going to Charlotte because LaMelo Ball's already there. And like Jackson said, you know, I think it's pretty close actually to me between the guys I have ranked, 1 through 5. I mean, yeah, 1 through 5. So yeah. Any other comments on the Brandon Miller selection? All right. Well, we'll move on. All right. So next, we have the Portland Trail Blazers on the clock, and Drew is picking for them.
Yes. So the third pick, this might come as a shock to some listeners who maybe are more inclined to get their draft news through quick little Instagram highlights, but I have the Trailblazers taking Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. I know Scoot Henderson has been talked about all year. He's been mostly locked into that number 2 spot, but with Brandon Miller's ascension, he's been kind of at that 3. I would say that I probably view Scoot and Cam. It's very close. I don't think this is saying one's better than the other. The logic for the pick was mostly positional fit. This is a Portland Trailblazers team that, as right now, has Dame Lillard, just drafted Shaedon Sharpe, and also has Anthony Simons they just extended. So adding another 6'2", 6'3" guard to that group that isn't really a shooter, it just doesn't make sense from a fit standpoint.
Unless you're trading Dame. We actually had a listener question about this yesterday.
Yes.
And our response, well, the only way it really makes sense is if you're the other thing would be is if you're in love with Scoot.
Sure.
But if you think it's close, yeah.
I think that as a prospect wise, Cam Whitmore is the type of player that every team on every NBA roster, he's very prototypical for that wing position, that 3-4 forward. Right away from an athletic and physicality standpoint, he looks ready to compete at the NBA level. Still needs to tone his body, continue to work on it, but this is a guy who's 6'7", 235. He had the fourth best vertical at the combine, and then he was the second heaviest. I don't mean like he was fat or anything, but he just had the second highest weight amongst wing players. So I think from a physical standpoint, this is a kid who's ready to get out there and compete. He's not going to be someone we're worried about being physically overmatched. I thought he was a really effective scorer at Villanova. He was a solid 48% from the field. He had strong advanced shooting splits. He had a 57% true shooting percentage, 55% effective field goal percentage. His three-point shot was okay at 34%, but something that I found interesting was that only 54% of his made threes were assisted. So roughly half of his three-point attempts, he was taking off the bounce, pull-up situations, side steps, step backs. And so for a player to still shoot 34%, and a lot of those attempts being self-created as a freshman playing in arguably the most competitive conference in college basketball, that's still pretty impressive. So in an NBA-like setting, if you were on the Trailblazers, where it's going to be a lot more, he's getting fed, kick-out passes, the ball's moving, hitting him in rhythm, I think that this could be a guy that is definitely in that mid-30 to start and has room to grow. I think he's a good rebounder for the position. He averaged 5 a game. He had a 21.5 defensive rebound percentage, and he had the fourth best total rebound percentage amongst Big East small forwards. So he's not afraid to get in there and, again, leverage that athleticism, leverage that physicality. I love guys who rebound, especially in the draft at the wing and forward positions, because it's like a transferable skill right off the jump, because rebounding is something that usually is more tied to athleticism and hustle. So if a guy does it at the college level, it's probably something that's going to carry over to a degree at the NBA level. And I think there's defensive upside. Again, I keep talking about the physical traits. He has them. I don't think he's a sit in a chair, slap the floor kind of guy who's going to be a shutdown defender, 94 feet. But he posted a top 25 steal percentage amongst freshmen in college basketball. He was actually pretty comparable to Anthony Black and Hassan Wallace out of Kentucky, who we all kind of view as more of the defensive touted perimeter players. So he was relatively comparable there. Again, I think that's more of a testament to just he's an athlete. He knows it, and he knows how to use that. And I think he held his own against bigs fairly well. There were a couple games I went back and watched. He got switched on to Sanogo at one point. And I think Sanogo ended up scoring. But again, he gets low, wide base, doesn't allow himself to get bullied. And that's the kind of thing you need from a young player in the NBA, to be technically sound and compete at those levels. Those are skills that he will learn and sharpen. But if he doesn't have that mindset coming in, it's hard to teach it. Weaknesses, right off the bat, it's his playmaking. He had a historically low playmaking profile. I forget the list that I was looking at, but in terms of guys that his 6.4 assist percentage was comparable to, not a very good list to be on. It was a lot of guys that either were bust or didn't ever really hit in the league. With his usage rate being 26%, and I believe the highest on the team, maybe tied for the highest on the team, that 6.4 assist percentage is pretty brutal. I mean, he gets tunnel vision at times. He had 20 games of 1 or less assists. And again, at the NBA, it will be less of an issue if he's on a guard-heavy team like the Trailblazers, but you still want a guy who has such a great quick step, such a great penetration ability to be willing to look up, look for shooters, make the right pass, not just have complete tunnel vision, especially for a young guy.
I gotta interrupt, and Jake might be able to back me up here, but I thought he was one of the most misused freshmen in the country, and he could go such long stretches without seeing the ball because they gave it to those 5th and 6th year seniors,
right?
Like Caleb Daniels, who's half the player Whitmore is. and he would just go so long without touching the ball, and they just really didn't run anything for him. They just left him standing out there at the 3-point line.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Were you done, Drew, or?
Oh, I just had one more thing.
Okay.
But I mean, I do agree. I think we've talked about that on the show going back, Rich, to like the start of the season. It's just something to keep of note. I mean, I would have liked to still see a little bit more natural playmaking, like understanding that I have to still be getting others involved, even if my number's not called, because he can get his whenever he wants. Like, but we know he can do his.
On that team, other than getting it to Eric Dixon, until maybe Justin Moore started the last few games of the season, who the hell's he going to pass it to?
That's fair. But I just think it's something of note. And then I just think that defensive-wise, while I think the tools are there, I think there were some times he waned. I wasn't super concerning. I think it was more just freshman. It was more just, hey, I'm an athlete. I can recover. And he did. He might fall asleep for a second, but he's so strong. He's so fast. He just recovered.
He visibly got frustrated at times last year. His
absolutely.
Body language got bad. He was upset, and the team was losing, and they weren't giving him the ball. I was mad.
100%.
If I was mad, he was probably 10 times as mad.
So I like Cam a lot. I think that when he gets to the NBA, I think some of this stuff will just naturally right itself because he'll be playing with more comparable and higher level talent. Yeah. There are things to keep track of. I mean, you have to acknowledge things.
I just wish the Portland Trail Blazers would take Kyle Neptune with him.
So I really like Cam. I think that, I don't like to throw the term can't miss, but we talked about how Brandon Miller's kind of has that bottom out where he's going to be a starting caliber guy. I think Cam's ability with his first step, his strength, his athleticism, his just, ability to play basketball kind of naturally. Mm-hmm. I think this is a guy that's going to get into the league and will probably be a starting 3, maybe a small ball 4.
Yep.
For the foreseeable future.
I think small ball 4. Yeah. But maybe a 3. Jake, I want to hear your comments on it because I know you've watched him a ton.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the tunnel vision. I think that kind of parlays into what you're saying, Rich, about the run stuff for him. I felt like when he went stretches without touching the ball, he would force because he hadn't seen the ball in a while. And and he was driving and it went nowhere, or he put up a bad shot. Something wasn't the flow of the offense just because he didn't see the ball for a while. So I definitely agree with that. Yeah, Drew, I also thought the same thing. Softball defense is stuff that's fixable. I just think it's freshman stuff. I don't think it's anything that's overly concerning. But I do think as far as positives go, like, look, this guy's built like a brick wall. Like, he's going to shield, like, defenders bounce off him. He can put his shoulder down and create a ton of space for himself. Would like to see the handle get a little shiftier and a little bit better, because if he can add that, then holy smokes! I mean, this guy's brings a lot to the table, and with a better handle to change direction, if guys can cut him off, he's going to be virtually unguardable. But I think he's got a little Anthony Edwards in his game, a guy that can hit some and make some tough shots, comes in with an NBA ready body, some crazy athleticism. That he'll be one of the best athletes in the league. So I think he's got a little bit of Ant Edwards to him. And I think there's some stuff with his game that's definitely fixable. But he's bringing a lot to the table, supreme athlete. I'd like Scoot. I probably would have put him here, but if you're going to take a Nova guy that high, I'm not going to get mad at you.
He's still only 18. A couple of knocks I had on him was that analytic-wise, I just had the word passing, so you guys covered that. But he goes left 80% of the time right now. And the other thing that's not an analytic is he doesn't have great length. And so that shows up on his shot blocking, so the vertical can only take you so far there, because you don't always want to be leaving your feet because you just don't. It's not a good defensive practice. So, so he doesn't have ideal length either. But all in all, very positive. I'm very high on him. All right. So next, number 4 on the clock is the Houston Rockets, and that's Booney's team. Booney, who you got going to Houston?
Yeah,
we've already had a couple of surprises.
We talk about the Houston Rockets. They're going to be building around 3 players: Jalen Green, who's signed for the next 3 years, Jabari Smith, and Kevin Porter, who are signed for the next 4. So they're obviously pretty stacked in the wing and guard category. But if Scoot Henderson falls to number 4, I don't care how many guards you have, you take him.
Right.
2, point guard, 195 pounds. He has been a pro since he was 17 years old. He's 19 right now. He has a staggering 46-inch vertical and a wingspan of 6'9". When you're talking about Scoot Henderson, you're talking about explosive, elite athleticism, physical and fast. Downhill scoring, ability to finish at the rim, and the best transition player in the draft. Mid-range game is reliable. I was able to see him come off pick and roll, knock down some shots, so forth. But that pick and roll is going to allow him to play make as well. Now, regarding his shooting, sure, he turned pro when he was 17. His first year, a dismal 17% from 3, which improved to 32%. But with that being said, his form looks good. He is balanced. The ball's in the pocket. Release comes off the hands softly. Rotation is perfect. Now, if you are not an NBA player, an NBA fan watching NBA games and you just watch college, think of Scoot Henderson as Mike Miles Jr. on steroids. If you are an NBA fan, I think Scoot Henderson is Derrick Rose, John Morant, and Russell Westbrook all wrapped into one. He has things you just simply cannot teach. He is the fastest and the most athletic prospect I have ever seen coming to the draft. I think you talk about Wembanyama being a generational player. I think Scoot Henderson is. He has been wrapped into that number 2 spot ever since mock drafts have come in. For some reason, and no fault of his, he's fallen down to number 4. And that is more to the credit as far as what we've seen from guys like Whitmore and Brandon Miller. But if you dive into really what Scoot Henderson can do, he is something else. He is unbelievable. And you know what else he has? He has a little dog in him. And I see that little dog in him comparable to how Allen Iverson used to play. Scoot Henderson, if he falls to number 4, take him. He is unbelievably good.
All right. So now I'm going to play devil's advocate. He had a horrible season. 20 for points per possession, 21st percentile. Transition, 16th. At the rim, 38th. On jumpers, 23rd. All well below 50%. So how does such a talented guy produce such dreadful numbers?
That's a hell of a question. You got to remember also. You got to remember also how many minutes he was playing as well. I mean, they had his minutes cut.
Well, wasn't he hurt at some point this year?
I know sometimes he was hurt someplace too, but at some time. But they were also cutting his minutes to about, I think, 19 a game. Something dreadful. Something dreadfully low where they were just looking to simply protect him. And he hadn't get any type of flow with that. When he played against Wembanyama, I mean, you saw a different type of
I saw a guy jack up a lot of shots and hit a lot of difficult shots. That's one of the things you can say that he does well above average is take a lot of shots off the
does take a lot of shots, and he hasn't proved that he can score off the ball. I agree with you there. But he also finished at the rim many, many times. And he also got a lot of transition layups way ahead of everybody else that other guys can't do. I hear what you're saying. I agree with it. But remember, he's 19 years old, and things he can do and has done in those games is something else.
How many guys saw both of the Met 92 Ignite games?
I only saw one.
All right. I thought Wembanyama got the best of that. Of course, he had the experienced professional team on his side, and Ignite had all those kids, and they haven't some of them hadn't even played in the G League yet. So, Scoot was at a disadvantage. And, I thought, watching them both at that time, I thought it was pretty even, but I thought Wembanyama had the edge. But then Scoot went on to have a pretty dreadful season. That's why he slipped down my draft board. I could see the athleticism, but I've seen too many guys that were great athletes not put it together. And every one of the guys you use as an example, D Rose, Westbrook, and Morant, none of them could shoot. They couldn't shoot in school, and they can't shoot now. So could we be looking at something like that? Now, if he could get to the rim and score like Morant can, where Morant is just like unstoppable at the rim. But this year, like I said, what did I say? It was 39th percentile in the G League. So yeah, I haven't watched. I have to study him a little more. I'm going to do that over the next couple of weeks to try to figure out what went wrong. Because he's probably one of the players that I just haven't seen as much as I need to. Do you guys think that there's any chance that Wembanyama won't go first?
No.
There's no chance. There's no chance.
No chance.
I think it's the same situation we have with like the Ja and Zion. Like the hype, from a business standpoint, it's just like you have to take him. Wembanyama is going to get you season ticket holders for the next 4 years minimum.
Right, exactly.
So it's like, and he is, in my estimation, I think he's better than Scoot, and I think he's better than Cam, and I think he's better than Brandon Miller. I don't think it's like these massive gaps people make it up to be. I think those other guys all have things they do just as well, if not better than him. But there's no way. Yeah. That's the thing with all these guys. There's something not, there's nobody that's perfect for sure. All right. So now number 5 is the Detroit Pistons in another Booney pick.
Back to back. When you're thinking of the Detroit Pistons, their backcourt's pretty filled. You got Cade Cunningham signed for the next 3 years, and Jaden Ivey signed for the next 4 years. So their backcourt looks pretty filled out there, right? You have Wiseman signed for the next 2, and Bojan Jonovic signed for the next 2 as well. But that's probably going to be it for them. So they do have a gap to fill in their front court, and I can't think of a better player to fill that gap than Jarice Walker from the University of Houston. 6'8", 235 pounds, 7'2" wingspan, 38-inch vert. His stats didn't knock you off the floor, didn't knock you off your chair by any means. 11.2 points per game and 7 rebounds a game. But I think that had a lot to do with playing at Houston and playing for Kelvin Sampson, who likes to float up on offense, defense first. Doesn't really take a priority on offense whatsoever. He's a high-level defender, and he got that from Houston as well. And he's the type of individual that's going to be able to guard all 5 positions. Going to make him a massive mismatch nightmare, both on the offensive side of things and on the defensive side of the floor. He needs to be more assertive. At Houston, for his size, he only attempted 80 free throws all year long. Yeah, the most he had in one game was 7. So he definitely needs to be more assertive. Maybe that's playing for Kelvin Sampson. Maybe that is being a freshman on a Houston game that was primarily number 1 all year long. When you think of Jarice Walker, I think the best type of comparison to an NBA player you're talking about is Julius Randle. And I see him being that type of player. Same type of size, shooting ability, weight, strength, so forth. But here's the thing. Julius Randle was not as dynamic as at Kentucky as Jarice Walker is at this time in his career. That's for sure. Randle was more of a bruiser inside at Kentucky. So another thing remember, Jarice Walker was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Every college in the land wanted him. And where did he decide to go? He decided to go for one of the most hard-nosed coaches, who's the hardest on players, in Kelvin Sampson in England. That says a lot about his character, that he wants to get better and he's not worried about that step. He has a unique skill set, and I think, and he's a multi-dimensional offensive player. I think any team in the NBA would be very, very fortunate after Tariq Walker. I like him going number 5 to the Detroit Pistons.
I moved him up to number 3 on my draft board after the combine because he knocked it out at the combine. Then you throw in that size. He's got Whitmore-like size, more length than Whitmore. Now, I don't think he's as dynamic of a scorer as Whitmore in terms of, creating his own type of shot yet. And I don't think and he probably won't. I think Whitmore is going to develop into a better shooter. But other than that, I mean, I think Jarice Walker has a lot of upside.
Yeah, I do too.
I love guys like Walker that come in with that like safe defensive floor. Like you see the offensive upside, but you kind of know like this guy's going to be a defensive player. He comes from a defensive background. Like at a minimum, like you see guys like Marcus Smart stick around and become defensive player. Like, and Jarice Walker is going to be a better defender than Marcus Smart is just based off the physical tools. And so it's like if he can even tap into some of the offensive potential combined with the defensive upside, out of all the guys we've mentioned, he feels like he might actually be like the safest pick.
Yeah.
In my opinion, just based on what we said.
Yeah, there's not much to complain about except, I mean, he's not a great shooter, not a great scorer. And like Booney said, he needs to be more aggressive on the offensive end. But, I think Sampson probably kind of curved, didn't want him to be, don't think they wanted him to be his primary focus. So yeah, but you're right. I don't have much written down. This sheet is filled with flaws, and for him, I don't really have any.
I thought about him a lot at 3. But I thought Cam's scoring and the way I thought it worked, but I really thought about Walker at 3.
He shot 34% from 3, 46% from the floor, which is no means staggering, but at the same time, for a freshman with his size playing in Houston's system isn't terrible either.
Right. And he didn't play the 5, he played the 4. Yeah. So he wasn't around the basket all the time. They had other guys doing that, like Juwan Roberts. So yeah. All right. Any other comments about Walker before we move on to the Magic at number 6?
I would just love him with the Pistons because they have like Kate Cunningham, Duren. They have a pretty young core already, so I don't really like him with them.
Yeah. And one guy I really like on the Pistons that Booney didn't mention is Duren. I think Duren's going to be a good ball player too. So yeah, they got now the Pistons are falling into the Orlando Magic area of the world where they have all this talent. Now, can they win with it? And that's who's next on the clock, the Orlando Magic, and that's Jake's team. Jake, who are you taking at number 6?
So I'm going to have the Orlando Magic taking Ahmed Thompson from Overtime Elite. I think he's the best player left available at this point. If you want to knock OTE in the competition, fine. But don't knock the Thompson twins because they're both very, very good players. Don't hold it against them because they're still very, very good. And especially Ahmed. So he is as spectacular as an athlete at this age as you will see. 6'7", 200 pounds. He's a 40-inch vertical and a 7'1" wingspan. So how's that going to help him? Well, besides all those physical tools, this dude's speed, stop-start ability, his handle's been getting better and changing directions. I mean, this guy's a handful to try and stay in front of with the moves he has and his just initial burst with the ball in his hands. Sometimes that's just enough to get by somebody and get to the rim. And when he's there, he can hang and hit. He just glides. Like he's just a spectacular athlete, a smooth, effortless, powerful leaper that will punch it on your head and can get to the rim easily. He's definitely more of a point guard than Asar is. Thought he was really, really good as a ball handler. Showed flash that he could be a main ball handler, but I also I like him at the Magic here because he's going to a team that has Suggs, and Cole Anthony could sign Markelle Fultz back. And spoiler alert, I have the Magic taking another guard. So he's going to have other guards on the floor. He's not going to be tasked with having to have no creation around him. He's going to have other guards on the floor with him that I think will make this more seamless. That'll make the transition more seamless for him. Of his on-ball defense, those physical tools are going to allow him to cover multiple different positions. Had over 2 steals a game last year with OTE. His weaknesses, though, his shooting's going to need a lot of work. It's going to need a lot of work. Now, by all accounts, him and Ahmed and Asar, 2 very good kids. Basketball matters to them. They worked their tails off. I was watching one of the games, and they had a little package they did at a practice. And Dave Latos was like, I've been around basketball 40-some years, and these 2 are some of the best I've ever seen in terms of being committed to this. And if that's the case, I think there's a lot of room for development that will get there. But you look at it now, 27% last year if you include the playoffs at overtime, only 65% from the free throw line. It shot short. It's flat. I think he needs to get more extension and more flick of that wrist and more power. It's not only percentages, but mechanically it lines up. The shot's going to need a lot of work.
He also does something weird with his offhand too.
Yeah, it kind of. I don't know how to. It's almost like a hitch.
It almost like it goes backwards.
Yeah, it's weird. So the shot is going to need a lot of work. The turnovers, it had a 2-to-1 assist ratio. I just felt like there was some plays where he was almost a little too unselfish. That I was like, I feel like he could have just gone up and shot the ball himself. But and then on defensively off the ball can be called ball watching. But let's be honest, that OTE, no one's tuning in for the defense in that league anyway. So love a lot of aspects of his game, his balance, his power, his explosiveness. This is a rare, special athlete who's very good as a ball handler in passing and distributing. And if that shot can get corrected and get right, you're looking at a very, very good basketball player with all-star potential here. So I'm going to take the best player available, regardless of need, because in reading hoops rumors, like their off-season rumors and off-season kind of outlooks, this is the worst team in the NBA the last 10 years is the Magic. I'm not worried about fit. You need to get good players in there. Draymond Green, I know last year or the year before, Golden State lost the game there. He said, no disrespect to them. We just lost to one of the worst teams in the league. You need talent in there. Right now, this is the best guy still left.
All righty. Any comments about Amen Thompson going to Orlando? And Jake, you broke it down really well, except for you didn't rag on OTE enough. So I'll pick up the slack there.
I'm not here to do that.
I am.
I'll let you. You can say your piece then.
So, Drew, did you watch any of the OTE games last year?
No, because last year?
Yeah.
Yes, because who did I? Yes, I was looking at because it was I was doing the report on Barlow and. Who was the point guard? That was
I have it right here. Gene Montero.
Montero. Yeah. So yes, I watched last year. Nobody put a gun to my head, so I was not going to watch it this year.
Okay. All right. So of course I've had to watch more this year, and it's like a production produced for the age range of 12 to 19. And they all everyone goes by their own cool nickname. And then of course my favorite cool nickname is Overtime Tom. Shut the KP up, will you, man? Overtime Tom. But anyway, so I had to turn the sound down anytime I watch this year. It's just horrible. 12-year-olds are probably really excited about it, but anyway, Jake really hit it with Amen, and with Asir, who I am picking for the Pacers at number 7. Similar logic. It doesn't fill a need, and I am not as high on the Thompsons as most people, but we're doing a mock draft, and so I'm trying to one of the things we do for our best available draft board is we look at other mock drafts to try to get a sense of what everyone is thinking. So Osir would have been the best available for the Pacers based on the collective opinion, not my opinion. So and to me, the biggest difference is, Amir is better attacking the rim. One thing you didn't say, Jake, I really love his body control. And he has excellent body control at the rim, can make some really difficult shots. So he's better at attacking the rim. He's a better passer. With Osir, he makes more defensive plays. I don't know if that's because of talent. He's a little longer. He has a little longer wingspan at 7 feet. Both are around 6'7", but Osir has that 7 feet wingspan. And I just think he puts in a little more effort on defense. But the thing I really like better, and I actually have him one spot higher than Amen on our draft board, and that is because his shot isn't nearly as broken. And he actually started hitting at a really nice clip toward the end of the season, especially in the playoffs. I mean, he was their go-to guy in the playoffs for the most part. So, moving on down, I'll give you those numbers. For the season, he shot 33% from deep compared to Amen, who was at 27%. But during the playoffs, he shot, and that was, that accounted for about a third of their games. He shot 39% from deep, 82% from the foul line, and averaged 21 points per game. So the other thing I love that he's strong and he's sturdy, and as I mentioned, has good length. He's a high flyer. I don't know. Everyone says the Thompsons are great athletes. I don't know. I have written down here good / great. But they do excel in transition, and Osir excels as both a scorer and a passer. And that's another thing I like about him is I think he could play point guard. He's certainly already secondary ball handler behind his brother. And when his brother's not in the game, a lot of times he is running the point. So I think he has that ability as well, though his assist to turnover ratio isn't as good. Defensively, he has excellent lateral movements, superior athletic movement. It's not a fundamentally sound league in terms of playing defense. So I would have liked to see him be a little more consistent with his effort. But like I said, I think he puts more effort into it than his brother. He can create his own shot, but that's the one thing I see about the Thompsons is I'm not overly enamored with their ability to create space. They have the moves, but their handle isn't super elite. And I don't necessarily see the explosiveness with the ball in their hands. Yeah, they do create space a lot, but that offense that they run uses a ton of pick and roll and a ton of handoffs to get those guys going downhill. And so I'm a little worried about their ability to create space at the next level. But with Osir, the fact that he's, improving as a jump shooter, that bodes very well for him. And he's an all-around stat sheet stuffer. As Jake said, by all accounts, both kids are good kids. And Osir particularly seems to play with an edge. And I wonder if that's because he's always like playing second fiddle to his brother. So I wonder if that's why he plays with a little bit of an edge. On the downside, besides things I didn't mention, he's turnover prone. He tries to do too much in terms of shot creation and passing. His shot still can improve. It's not perfect. One thing that really surprised me is he doesn't finish in traffic as well as you would expect for somebody who weighs more than Victor Wembanyama. He's like 220. So he's got like 10 pounds of Wembanyama, and he just doesn't, finish well as well as you would expect through contact. Let's see. And I guess, the only other thing was, we don't know whether the jury's still out on Overtime Elite. What kind of players they're producing. And the Thompsons, you have to remember, before they went to Elite on the recruiting scales, they were borderline 5 stars. They were ranked in the low 20s. And now all of a sudden, they're ranked higher on draft boards now than they were on the high school recruiting draft boards before Overtime Elite. So go figure that one out, because that rarely works out that way. So the other thing is they've never participated in any U.S. national events or all-star games. This went straight from high school into Overtime Elite. That's the only thing they've done. And so when you look at who played at Elite last year, you have Dominic Barlow's on a 2-way with the Spurs. He was solid. He played about half his games in G League, half with the Spurs. He was solid last year. You had Gene Montanaro, who couldn't stick with the Knicks and had to return to Spain. Of course, he played well in Spain again. And then you have Leonard Miller, who had a really good season with G League Ignite. So they were the 3 big guys they produced last year. So none of them went on to be NBA stars right away. And, of course, the jury's still out on Leonard Miller. So, yeah, I'm not as high on the Thompsons, but based on like I said, this is a mock draft, so we're going on what we think the NBA teams will do. So I have him going to the Pacers at number 7. Any comments?
Well said.
All right. So Jake, do you disagree? Because you called them outstanding athletes, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not so sure.
Well, no, I mean, I think Ahmed is pretty special, like with his explosion, like turning the corner. Like I think he's a pretty damn good athlete with that speed, the burst, like his ability to hang and hit and finish. Like I do think Ahmed is a very special athlete.
Yeah, I do think he's better. Like I said, at attacking the rim, and better at creating space. So. All right. So now, at number 8, we have the Washington Wizards, and Jackson is back on the clock picking for the Wizards. Who do you have at number 8?
Yeah, for 8, I went with the Anthony Black for the Wizards. To be honest, we'll see what the Wizards want to do with, I think, Kuzma and Porzingis in free agency. And of course, they still have Bradley Beal, but I think it's just go with the best available player here. Anthony Black, one of the better defenders in the draft, I think. 6'6", 6'7", I think, around there. And the biggest question mark for him is just obviously the shooting. He only went 70% from the free throw line and 30% from 3 on about 2.5 attempts per game. And he kind of has that, I don't want to say Lonzo Ball shot, but he does shoot it kind of like off to the left of it, to the face. So I think there wasn't a lot of him being able to create that shot off the dribble. And then there's always the question mark of him just being able to shoot in general from beyond the arc. But he was really easily a good passer, but he also had about 3 turnovers a game to about 3.9 assists. So not the greatest at assist turnover ratio. But I think he does have like really good passing ability. It's just that I think he was asked to do a lot for Arkansas. But yeah, I think his greatest calling card is his defense. I'm curious what you guys think about him playing the point guard position or just being like a wing defender in the league.
I think he's point guard. He was for Arkansas. If you look at his analytics, they were mostly below average offensively. He had pretty high turnover rate and some of the things he couldn't do well. So, but when you threw in the passing numbers, he was well over 50 percentile. So he has. Arkansas was a limited offensive team this year. And, Nick Smith wasn't around for a good portion of the year. And when he wasn't around, he wasn't playing great. Who's the guy that could shoot that got hurt? Like
Brazil.
Yeah, right. Travion Brazil got hurt, 10 games into the season.
Yeah.
and Nick Smith, he was out for most of the season. I don't think you've seen Anthony Black at his best. And I love Anthony Black because just like Andre Jackson, he just makes winning plays. I think the shot can come along. I think he's going to be a better passer with better surrounding cast. And certainly, not only could Washington really use a point guard, but they could use somebody who could play defense. So I think he's a great fit for that team.
Yeah, I agree, Rich. I think that if they're going to take him this high, a top 10 pick, he has to be a point guard, because if not, then you're relegating him to basically a defender, and you don't take a specialized defender 8th overall. Not the same player, but maybe hopefully can grow into a Josh Giddey-esque, where it can't really shoot still, but just, can do so much more. He rebounds, competes on defense, is a solid playmaker. I mean, Giddey took big strides this year. I mean, he was a really good player this year.
Right.
But if you look at his first year, I just pulled the numbers. He was 42% from the floor, 26% from three. He did average 12 a game. I don't know if Anthony Black's going to be able to average even double digits right off the jump. He just is really limited offensively. But if he can evolve in that role, it's big guard, and the scoring comes along, I think I really like this kid. I know, Rich, we went way back when we did our freshman. I just think he's made of the right stuff to compete in this league. If a guy like Pat Beverly can make it in this league and stick around, I think Anthony Black can.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The only thing, at the combine, I mean, he was around as an overall performer, and I'm comparing them to anybody in our database. He was around the 70th percentile overall. I thought he would be more like 80th, 90th, athletically. And he also doesn't have great length. I think his wingspan is +3, something like that. So those numbers were a little disappointing, but not enough for me to make Anthony Black fall out of the lottery. And I just think he's a winner. I really do. And I think the intangibles here are the greatest thing about him.
I'm just not a big Anthony Black guy. I know we've had this before, and you're going to go top 10. He can't shoot a lick, and there's not even an upside for him. At Arkansas, they're literally just, he's getting time to set up. They weren't guarding him. And I have a concern that when he's in the game, it's going to turn into they're not going to guard him. It's going to turn into 5 guys, and they're going to leave him absolutely alone. I see him being a deficiency, and and fundamentally looking at his jumper's not there either. Can he get better? Yes. Is everything else you guys saying correct? 100%. But for somebody to completely not be able to shoot it that way, and also with Bali, he didn't play, I believe, in the second day of the combine either, to show a little bit more.
No, he didn't play at all. Actually,
I thought he played the first day, didn't he?
No, he tested out. He tested out and measured, but he didn't play.
So but I get where you guys are going, and if that jump shot gets a tad better, he's going to be something.
Right. All right. So number 9 is the Utah Jazz, and Booney's back on the clock.
Back on the clock. This is one of, I believe, 3 first-round picks for the Jazz. They loaded up with that trade of Gobert, and who else did they go?
Walker Kessler.
Yeah.
Yes.
Among others.
Yeah, exactly. When you're looking at the Jazz, you're looking at a legitimate. They're going to be looking to build around someone like Colin Sexton. They got Kelly Olynyk right now, and Jordan Clarkson is in a player option of his contract. Next year will be his last year. They're not going to re-sign him. Walker Kessler, of course, is very, very good. 6'8", small guard out of the University of Kansas. Jazz are going to go with Grady Dick, wingspan of 6'11" and a vert of 40 inches. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He went to Kansas, had a lot of hype about him. I think what he did at Kansas was what we expected. I don't think he did anything that knocked us off our chair, but he wasn't a disappointment either. He averaged 14 a game, 5 rebounds a game, He shot 44% from the floor, 40% from three. He is an elite shooter with nearly a 7-foot wingspan, and his release is high and quick, lightning quick. He's athletic, he's long, and he is effective whether the ball is in his hand or he's playing off the ball. He handles the ball well, which allows his athleticism to finish at the rim. But the only way he got his shots off at Kansas was through dribble penetration and kick, or if someone, or a transition, or if somebody went for one of his pump fakes, which broke down the defense, allowed him to get to the paint. When you're thinking, what reminds me of Grady Dick is Klay Thompson at Washington State. Same type of height. They both can really, really score in bunches. Now, don't get me wrong, he has a long, long way before he gets to Klay Thompson type skill. He's nowhere close to what Klay Thompson is on the defensive side of the floor, only weighing 205 pounds. He's going to be a matchup dream for the opponent. Defensively, he's going to struggle. He's too light, too small, too weak to guard a big, and not quick enough to guard a fast guard. But I think Grady Dick is NBA ready now. He can help a team win now. But as far as he being an elite player, it's going to take some time. Rich, excuse me. Grady Dick had a 34-inch vert. I was looking at another player's name, which is significantly different than 40, but still, with his release, his height, his shooting, I like him going in top 9.
Yep. Another one of those players, it's hard to find a flaw. Yeah, he's an average athlete. But the only thing I thought that maybe I'd like to see Dick do more of, beside, defensively, I'd like to see him play better. But, I'm thinking with his shooting ability, he's pretty much, can't miss type of guy. He's going to have a job for a long time. It just depends on how well he plays defense, is how high his ceiling is. But the one thing in terms of shooting, I would like to see him do more of and be better at is shooting off screens. So, Jordan Hawkins, for example, is one of the best in the country, maybe one of the best we've seen in a long, long time doing that. And that's something Dick isn't as well at, moving off the ball and catching it and going immediately up. He doesn't have that. He's not great at that particular aspect of shooting, but everything else about his shooting is top notch.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else? All right, moving along. All right, number 10 is Cam's pick. Cam is not here today, so I'll do that for him. He picked Taylor Hendricks of Central Florida for the Mavericks, who definitely have a need for a true power forward. And Taylor Hendricks fits the bill very nicely. Kind of came out of nowhere. He was a 4-star. He was top 70 recruit. I think he was around 64. But he really exceeded expectations at UCF. I'm sure they didn't see him being a one and done. He's 6'9". He has an 8'11" reach with a 7'1" wingspan. Athletically, he tested out very well for a big, around the 58th percentile in our database for overall rating. And he has an excellent standing vertical of 32.5. And he's only 19. In terms of statistics this year, for those of you not familiar with Taylor, he wasn't a go-to guy on a not so good UCF team this year. They were okay. But he kind of like Cam Whitmore, he could go long stretches without seeing the ball. Even so, he still averaged 15.2 points per game on 48% shooting from the field, 39% from deep on about 4.5 attempts per game, shot 78% from the free throw line, grabbed 7 rebounds a game, had 1.4 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.7 blocks, and 1.4 turnovers. Excellent numbers, especially when you're talking about a guy with that size, length, and athleticism. So now I did not scout him personally, but I saw him play many a times. But I'm going to skim through Cam's notes here. Says he has huge defensive upside, capable of switching on to all 5 positions, quick decision maker, strong rotational instincts. He bursts out to a 3-point arc on closeouts, has a real knack for when to leave his man and for the blindside block. Length for days, 1.7 shots per game. He likes his spot up shooting. He says his mechanics need a little cleaning up, indicated by 78% of the free throw line. Now, I think 78%, especially for a big, is pretty damn good. Definitely higher on the higher end of overall motor and effort. Has the ability to overcome larger and stronger defenders. Despite a skinny frame, competes hard as a rebounder. He says, Cam says he has great leaping ability and sharp elbows. He says he has high dexterity. He's a high dexterity player, prone to the occasional lefty hook across the lane, double clutches, blah, blah, blah. So what doesn't he like? He doesn't like his skinny body type, not a high volume pick and roll player. Hendricks finds his offense primarily through well-timed rotations between the dunker spot and shifting between the 3-point line. Says he's got to tighten up his handle. Says he is no Jaren Jackson Jr., but he can be baited into some boneheaded fouls. So also synergy, he has great numbers on synergy as well. 82 percentile on jumpers, 56 on the bounce for a big. However, only 52nd at the rim, which is not great. It's another, seeing, similar things to, kind of surprising that it would only be 52nd percentile at the rim. Very good with hooks and runners, and above the 92nd percentile on post or pick and roll plays, transition plays, and post plays. But just 32 percentile on cuts. Again, that could be the fact that he's poor on cuts, the fact that he has great length and can finish above the rim. I would put that more probably on the crappy UCF guards that they had. He's definitely not an ISO player. He didn't do well in ISO this year. And he tends to drive right more, and he's better going in that direction. So that's more about his handle. Cam calls him shades of Jonathan Isaac. Hopefully he stays healthier than him. Defensive driven Michael Porter Jr. Again, Cam picked another guy who has injury history. As far as I know, Taylor Hendricks has no injury history. So I like this pick. I think it fits well for the Mavericks. I really like Taylor Hendricks. Any comments? All righty.
I think he goes higher. I think he goes higher in the draft, to be honest.
Well, I considered him at number 7. And the only reason I didn't, as I said, I was picking not so much who I would have picked. In fact, on our mock draft on our site, I have Hendricks at number 7, going to the Pacers. However, popular opinion is that, the Thompsons are higher. So that's why I have Azir Thompson going. But yeah, I agree, Jackson. All right. So now at number 11, we're getting toward the end of the lottery here, gentlemen. At number 11, we have the Orlando Magic and Jake. That's Jake's team. Who are you taking at number 11, Jake?
We're going to go with another guard, as I spoiled earlier. I think this is still the best guy on the board right now, and I'm going to go Casey Wallace. Team in the Magic, 25th in points allowed. Just not, defensive. And they have to get better at every facet, but let's go with one of the best defenders, maybe the best in the entire draft. This dude, every single facet of defense, he's got it. You want him to be aggressive on the ball, he'll pick up half court. He's got good length with a 6'8.5" wingspan. He'll poke the ball away. He's got great quick hands that when an offensive player tries to change directions, if you try and cross over in front, he's going to pick it away from you. Create events on defense. Good anticipation off the ball, too. Really good when a defender comes in the paint. He's good at playing angles and playing gaps. Stunt at guys. Force a pickup. Force a jump pass. Off the ball, will tag rollers, play good help defense, switches and communicates well. And pretty much every facet of defense he has for you. Got 42-inch vertical. He's a good athlete, and he was very good as a finisher this year. In transition, in half court, was able to finish at the rim very, very well for a guard. Shot 35% from three. I don't think there's any crazy work that needs to go on here with the jump shot, but I do believe that he'll get coaching to clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up there. And also, he was forced into a lead guard spot a lot with Saber Wheeler being out. He kind of had to assume the role of point guard. Had over a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Thought he operated the pick and roll nicely. And the thing that I like about his ability at the next level is with his finishing ability and ability to get in the paint and put pressure on the rim, that will help his playmaking ability at the next level. Some lob threats like Apollo, like a Wendell Carter, and some athletes. Weaknesses, though, and this can kind of be a blessing and a curse. He's so aggressive on defense. I feel like sometimes he can maybe be out of position and will get beat simply because he's so aggressive in playing passing lanes and helping sometimes. But I'm not really concerned about that because he's got the energy and the will to play on that. And if you don't care about playing defense, can't really get through to you and teach you that. But this dude has the ability to want to play defense, draw the toughest assignment, guard the best player. However, some questions here. Is he going to continue to shoot well enough to drive, to open up driving lanes for himself at the next level? And, is this a guy you want to be the primary ball handler? I thought it was good that he got the reps when Saber Wheeler was out, but he's going to be on the floor with other guys too. So, when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, offensively, is he still going to be as effective as a slasher? As he catch and shot the ball well, is that going to translate? So I really like Cason Wallace as a player. I think he's going to be an NBA player for a long time. Don't have a ton of questions because, like I said, he got forced into a role that I thought he played somewhat well. Even though their offense struggled a little bit, I thought with what he had, he did a pretty good job. But that defense is terrific and will keep him in the league for a while.
Were you using Booney's vertical chart?
No.
All right, you guys got to look at the combine numbers because I know this from past experience. Kentucky's Pro Day, if you compare Kentucky's Pro Day, the numbers that they post compared to what actually the players can do at the combine, they're usually very different. Okay. And Wallace's vertical was 36, max vertical 36, which is a little above average. But trust me, Kentucky, I don't know, always makes their players just look just a little better, sometimes more than a little better than they actually are. And that goes along with measurements too. And they're not the only school to do it. So, but Kentucky famously usually publishes their pro day results. So the only problem I really have with Wallace, by the way, he ranked at the 88th percentile this year for scoring plus assists. So it's a really good measurement of a playmaker, all-around playmaker. And not few were better than him in terms of if you took his point per possession numbers and threw in the assists, he was right up there. He struggled in transition this year. I don't think he's a burner. And so that's one concern. I just don't think he's a top-notch athlete. But you know what? I said the same thing about Maxey when he came out of Kentucky, and he's doing pretty good. So, with Maxey, I think Maxey had more shot creation coming out, but I think Wallace may be a better defender and passer.
Agreed. Yeah, that defense will keep him in the league, and yeah, I don't think his burst or his speed will blow you away exactly, but look, when he was able to get to the rim, like he was still able to finish when he was able to get to his spot and get all the way to the hole. So
Yeah.
I like what he can do. I'm very happy that I was able to pick him at 11 because I think I think an Oddman Thompson, Case and Wallace duo would be a hell of a haul for the Magic at 6 and 11.
Right. And yeah, they'll have to find some takers for somebody though.
Yeah.
But all right. So number 12, we haven't heard from Drew for a while. Number 12 is Oklahoma City, and this is Drew's team. Who do you have going to the Thunder, Drew?
So with the 12th pick, I probably have the least known prospect or the biggest anomaly so far. That's going to be Belial. I hope I pronounced his last name right here. Coulibaly.
Yep.
Coulibaly.
You nailed it.
Most notably and probably most well known for being teammates with Victor Wembanyama right now. Now, finding some of his measurements, they were all over the place. I mean, wingspan reports from 7'1" to 7'3". Weight I saw from 190 to 230. I don't think he's 230. I would say
he's 230.
He's probably somewhere in the middle. I would say maybe that 195, 200 pound range.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds about right. You might see in the thing, I put 230 with a question mark. I was like, there's no way. So I had to go back and watch a lot because this is a player, again, who's not super well known. And I don't mean this in a negative way. He's kind of a highlight player to a lot of people where you see like wow, look at the length, look at the speed, look at that dunk, look at that steal. But when you go back and watch the full game, you kind of get a feel for him as a prospect, and that he's definitely a super raw prospect. We have this conversation with a lot of guys when they're 18 and foreign. Right away for strengths, I think he has massive defensive upside. He uses his length and his raw athletic ability to jump passing lanes. He can test shots. He's a solid rebounder. I watched some game film. He does try to get in there, mix it up on the offensive glass. For his league, he posted a 3.2 steal percentage and a 2.1 block percentage. Now, I'm not saying this is going to one-to-one chance for the NBA, but to compare, the leading steal percentage in the NBA was 2.9%, and his 2.1 block percentage, if you were to look at the NBA, was comparable to OG and Giannis, who we view as good defenders. I'm not saying that he's going to come to the league and instantly do that.
Dude, though, he's a dog on defense.
But he's a dog on defense.
He gets after
it. He gets after it. I think this kid is – that right away kind of sold me. I'm like, you know what? I like this kid already. He competes. His true shooting percentage was at 62%. He's a solid free throw shooter. I think he was 71% at the line across 50 games. I think that true shooting percentage is a little misleading. He uses his go-to thing is his length, athleticism. He loves to get to the rim. That's his main offensive weapon. He tries to make one move, get into that paint, and just try to finish over and around people. Did a pretty good job of it. I believe he shot 53% from the floor, if I'm not mistaken. He was effective from the floor overall. The jump shot, three-point shot looks serviceable. I don't think it's mechanically broken. He did shoot 34% from three across 50 games. The volume wasn't super high. I think it might have only been like 2.5, 2.25 attempts a game.
He shot, since he switched, he started off the year in the juniors. And since he switched to the French league, including the playoffs, he's shooting, I think, 38% from three.
Yes. Yeah. So if you look at it overall, he's at 34, but he has been shooting the ball really well recently. And then why I picked him here for the Thunder, I know that, when we made the pick, Rich, we talked about maybe, seemed a little bit early. And I do agree, maybe not the best pure basketball player right now, but I think this is a guy that fits the Thunder's timeline. Look, they're clearly going young. There's so many young contributors on this team. They're loaded. And who doesn't want a 6'6" defensive dog who's got potentially a 7'1" to 7'3" wingspan and doesn't look completely broken and unfixable on offense? I just envision a lineup of Shea, Giddey, Jalen Williams, and Chet. That is big. That is long. That is switchable. That is 6'6" plus at every position. This kid might not be done growing. I would not be shocked if by the time he's 23, 24, he's 6'7", 6'8", and really does have a 7'2" wingspan. Weaknesses, he has to continue to build his body. I know this is a thing we've said about a lot of these kids, and we say it every year. He could still be growing into it. I've said that. He has to learn how to play and in control, leverage strength, leverage athleticism, relying on, your length and your wingspan in a league with everyone has a big wingspan and is long and athletic just isn't going to work. Ball handling and playmaking are shaky at best. He's capable of simple dribble moves. He can rip one dribble, get to a spot. He can pull up with a one quick little dribble move. But if you're talking about a guy trying to create for others, not really going to happen. he gets himself in trouble a lot coming downhill. He doesn't have great control. So he comes down and it sets himself up for taking charges. He loses the ball sometimes. Defenders can get a hand on it. And next thing you know, he's getting swarmed, trapped. Defenses are collapsing. So he has to learn how to play with his head on a swivel, make the right read. And if he is going to be going to the rim, be strong and assertive, but also under control. And the shot, while again, it looks serviceable, especially from three, in my opinion, it's pretty rigid and slow. It's kind of got a wind up to it. It's not like a catch and just like a Grady Dick or a Jordan Hawkins where it's just smooth, catches it, and next thing you know, it's off the fingertips. There seems to be a wind up. So I think that that's fixable, but he's got to learn how to play at NBA speed. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for this kid is just NBA athleticism and NBA speed are going to kind of be a shock when everybody's able to do what he's able to do on a basketball court. But I would have no problem with this pick. Give him a year of seasoning in the G League. He can grow with his core. And if you insert him into this lineup, while maybe they won't have a traditional four, there aren't many in today's NBA anyways, that is a dream lineup to me of guys who are competitive. This team is getting better. And I'm just imagining him, Jalen Williams, and Chet kind of on that front line are like that big. That is athletic, that is long, and that is switchable. That's two forwards with a 7+ wingspan. So it's probably a bit high for his ability to play right now. But I think this kid is made of the right stuff. And for not having seen a lot of him and then watching the full games, he's a dog on defense. That alone will get his foot in the door.
I've been watching the French playoffs, and to me, he's in a lot of ways has stood out more than Wembayama. His burst, it's hard for people to stay in front of him. And you're right, he's not a great shot creator at this time or facilitator, but I also think I wouldn't be shocked if he could maybe play. Definitely, I think he'll be a secondary ball handler, can be. Yeah. And I think he might be able to play point guard. I know that's a stretch if we look at his stats, but he's doing a lot of ball handling right now for Met 92. So, and I don't think they'd be in the championship game without him. And earlier this season, when we had, I forget, my goodness, I'm sorry, apologize ahead of time. I have to look his name up, but we had the scout who went to Portsmouth on, and he said that he ran into a European scout, and that European scout said the most impressive European player to him was Koulibaly. And I kind of was dismissive of that. And the reason is because I've had it in my head since the beginning of the season. This kid started off in juniors. He played 20-some games in juniors. And it was like, there's no way someone's going to come from the junior league and go into the NBA draft and get drafted. Just doesn't happen. Well, he did. He made the jump to the French league. And he's one of their best players. He's playing for the championship starting tomorrow, best of 5, I think. And now he's a possible lottery selection. And the more I watch him, the more I like him.
Yep.
All right. So now we'll move on to pick number 13. Only 2 to go. The penultimate pick with the Toronto Raptors. And they're only picking the draft unless they make a trade. Are the Raptors going to be in trade talks, Jake?
No, I'm going to have them making a pick. I'm going to have them taking.
No. But I'm saying you could trade. You could just conceivably. Siakam has been on the trade block, and OG's been on the trade block forever. You could trade them.
I don't think they'll do anything until they hire a coach.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
I can't really add anything as far as what does the coach want to do? They don't have one yet. I think Kenny Atkinson seems like a logical pick here. Someone they've interviewed. I
thought they've been leaning toward the Italian coach.
Yeah, they have an international guy, so who knows what that could be. I know they have a couple guys. Obviously, Siakam's been in talks of maybe being traded. OG Anunoby's had his name thrown around.
For
Fred
2
Van
years.
Vliet's a free agent.
Right.
Van Vliet's a free agent. Gary Trent Jr. is a free agent. So you have some guy there's a lot of they're definitely in limbo right now. Are they gonna is Masai Ujiri gonna blow this up? Are they gonna rebuild a little bit? I personally think they will, especially if they're gonna hire the Italian coach and they're gonna hire somebody from overseas and it's his first time in the NBA. Some guys walk out the door. they think they could be headed toward a rebuild here. And I'm going to take a pick that I think will match up with the rebuild. I'm going to take a bit of a swing, go with Tariq Whitehead. I
Wow.
really like what this guy's going to bring to the table, but the reason I bring up the whole rebuild is you got to give him time to get healthy following this foot surgery he got. Got one at
Right.
Duke.
Maybe you should explain that a little bit.
So he had a stress fracture at Duke. He had an injury in high school, but he had a stress fracture at Duke before the season started, and it didn't heal properly, so he got another procedure pretty recently. So I would imagine he's not going to play in summer league. But if the timeline of the Raptors is to kind of blow this up, don't rush him back and give him as much time as he needs, because I think if he gets his athleticism back and he gets the explosiveness that you saw him in high school with, this could be a very good NBA player. A big forward, 6'7", 220, can handle it. Showed some. I mean, he was putting up. He was like ridiculous dunks in high school. Like, you really saw how good of a player he could be, and why everybody was so excited as him as one of the best players coming out of high school. But the concern is, if you saw him play when he got back from the foot surgery, that explosion, that athleticism, that vertical wasn't there, and it affected his on-ball defense a bit. It affected his ability to finish at the rim and get all the way there, and all those good traits you saw about him in high school, you didn't quite see. I thought it started to come back toward the end of the year, which was promising. But while he wasn't able to finish and have the highlight plays that he did while he was in high school, he shot the ball very well this year, over 42% from three on 3.5 attempts. Really good catch and shoot, confident, will shoot with a contest in his face. You didn't need to give him much room, and he was going to put it up. And he was effective shooting the ball. Defensively, off the ball, I thought he was good. At times, tagging rollers. Duke switches a lot. So there was some times where it looked bad because they're young, just as they almost always are, and they have to switch a lot. But I thought that in half-court sets, he did show enough to be a good defender off the ball at the NBA level. But a lot of his concerns to me all are centered around his injury. Is he going to be able to come back from that? I'm going to take the bet here because I believe in Tariq Whitehead's talent. And if he's able to get healthy from this foot injury, I think he can be a very, very good NBA player. But all these weaknesses, all these questions, all revolve around the injury. And if he's going to heal properly. If he doesn't have that burst, that athleticism to get by people, play make. He didn't have to play make a ton. He only started 7 games last year, and they had Tyrese Proctor and Jeremy Roach, who was an experienced point guard. But if he can put all that together, he has shown in high school he can do a lot of these things. And he shot the ball very well in college. So this is a risk. This is a swing here. But if you have a rebuilding team, they can give Tariq Whitehead time, whether that's training camp, the start of the season. You give him as much time as he needs to get healthy. And I think you could have a very good starter here who can score, who can play make a little bit, and who will be a reliable defender for you as well.
Yep. Couple of things. He started the year number 3 on our draft board.
Mm-hmm.
He really struggled at the rim and in transition this year because of a lack didn't have the same kind of burst.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he as you said, he didn't do a lot of playmaking either. But he also only played 20 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. It is a really good gamble. It falls into that Nick Smith Sensabaugh, by the way, is recovering from knee surgery. So he's unable to work out for teams like Whitehead. So that's why we've seen him slip down boards. When you're dealing with foot injuries, that can be tricky. We've seen it with Embiid. It's ended some players' careers, but he's young. He's still only 18. I think it's a good gamble. And I really liked his defense personally this year. I was highly impressed coming in. Obviously, it was tough to judge him knowing that he wasn't completely healthy. All right. Last pick of the lottery. We have the New Orleans Pelicans or New Orleans. And the pick is owned by Drew. Drew's running the Pels.
So
got Drew at 14.
Really quick, just some quick in my local Mongolian Mike coming to USF, just officially transferred.
Oh,
so I'm going to be going to some games on the Hilltop to go watch
Nice,
Mongolia.
nice. You can
anyways.
heckle him. You can heckle him.
Well, I'm a Zags fan, man, so he can come. I hope he plays well. I just hope we beat him by 30.
You just got in the game. How'd you get 2 fouls?
So with the 14th pick to end the lottery, I have the Pelicans taking the shooter out of UConn, Jordan Hawkins. Obviously, the biggest strength is shooting. I think he's the best shooter in the draft. Rich, you mentioned earlier, I mean, his ability to come off screens. This guy, what my favorite thing about shooters is when they can, obviously the whole catch and shoot thing, but when they're mobile, they move, they relocate, and they really buy into the notion of you are an offensive weapon. You can, I've seen it for years with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but Jordan Hawkins shoots at a high level, but he bends defenses by, he's on the move, he's coming off screens. He's not the type of guy that's going to stand in a corner and hope someone kicks it out to him. He can do that, but man, if this guy comes off a screen, it's coming off his fingers. It's lightning quick. At 6'5", he has the height to get the shot off. He's not a small shooter. I mean, he shot 50% from 3 during the tournament. He was 39% for the season on close to 8 attempts a game. And he was 49% on spot up and catch and shoot 3. So when he is in that kind of rhythm, he is lethal. But like I said, he's mobile and he's going to get to his spot in a variety of ways. He's an elite free throw shooter as well, at 89% on 4 attempts a game. I think free throw shooting is something that we are always hard on players on, but we don't give enough credit when they're good at it. Like, that is a valuable thing. That is a guy that can be on the court in late crunch time situations, and you know that he's going to be able to handle that, get to the line and knock down shots. I think he's, like I said, he's great off the ball. On the ball, obviously there's some concerns there. My biggest issue is probably that he's a 40% field goal percentage. So, I mean, the fact that his 3-point percentage and field goal percentage are basically the same tells you that anytime he's getting into that mid-range and at the rim, it's a little bit shaky. And I think a lot of that's due to his frame. I mean, he's 186, 190 pounds. So that is pretty thin. He's going to have to bulk up so he's not getting pushed off his spot.
He can finish above the rim.
He's a good athlete. And that's why I said, the point defensively, I think he's a solid defender. He's a smart player. He doesn't overextend himself. He makes the right rotations. He makes the right reads. But that physicality element is going to be a problem. People are still going to be able to go at him in one-on-one isolation matchups. The NBA is a pick-and-roll league. How is he going to hold up on those big, hard screens coming up? Is he going to be able to recover, fight through those for the course of a game? He's a good enough athlete to recover, but when it's fourth quarter and around the court, can you still recover after taking 8 or 9 of those hard screens from a big player? I'm not 100% sure. He's not a great passer. He's not a great rebounder. I mean, shooting is the calling card. Yes. Now, the reason I think at 14, I don't have an issue with this pick for a couple reasons. A, this is a common thing that end of lottery is capped off with shooters. I believe Corey Kispert was the 14th pick a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I know he was late in the lottery to the Wizards. We've seen Kevin Huerter, who I believe was a first-round pick. I'm not sure if he's at the end of the lottery, but he's
he and DiVincenzo were, I think, just outside the lottery.
Right.
Like, I think Huerter might have been 15 and DiVincenzo like 17.
Was 16, 16 or 17. So when I look at what the Pelicans need, they have a very complete roster. They're one of the more interesting rosters to me. I know there's a lot of what's going on with Zion. Rich, I'm not sure if you've been following that saga with Zion's love life, which is getting pretty wild. But this is a complete roster. And they only have 3 contributors that are over 30 years old. They are relatively young. I mean, Brandon Ingram's an all-star caliber player, and he's only 25. I think Jordan Hawkins is a guy that can instantly come in, instantly absorb minutes. You don't have to worry about him in terms of maturity and basketball IQ. He's a seasoned player. He's played at the high level. He's won at the high level. Shooting is a skill every single team needs. And like I said, I think he's the best shooter in the draft. Him and Trey Murphy, I think, are great young fundamental shooters that you can build around. I know age, some people might look at 21 and think, oh, he's on the older side. That doesn't faze me. I think 21 is plenty young. As a 26-year-old, 21 is young. That is a great 10-year window for him to be a prime, great shooter with solid athleticism. If he can just develop a couple counter moves when he gets run off the line, I think this guy's going to be one of those dudes who just sticks around the league. And you know, I can see him. I say like a KCP role for this guy, and maybe even like a KCP career arc to a degree. I think he's a little bit better and a little bit more polished than KCP was coming in. But Caldwell Pope was not the shooter Hawkins was not great offensively, struggled with his efficiency, but has now turned himself into a really good shooter. he's 6'6", a relatively lighter player, but still holds up well defensively, competes at a high level, and has turned himself into a really well-rounded basketball player. And I think Hawkins is better and has the potential to be better than KCP. But I can see him absorbing a role on a really good team where he's starting at that 2, is able to bend defenses, and if he can just figure out a one-dribble pull-up, a floater a la Julian Strother when he gets run off the line.
Yeah.
I think this guy is going to be a really solid player. Do I think he's an all-star star player? Probably not. But I think if Kevin Huerter can be on the, can soak up minutes in the playoffs, I think this guy can in a couple of years too.
Yeah, floater's a good point. He was 32nd percentile. 32nd percentile this year at the rim. And with floaters, he only took 13, but he only made 1.
Yeah, he's got to have counter
for
moves.
a slight guy, if you have trouble with contact, your alternative is to come up with some kind of floater runner game.
Yeah.
So he definitely needs to do something about one of those 2 things. But you're right. Yeah. You hit it on nail on the head. I think worst case scenario, he's JJ, a little more athletic JJ Redick. Worst case.
That's what a 14-year NBA career. So
Right,
I think this guy's. I know we say can't miss. We think about he's a can't miss All NBA MVP candidate, but I think Jordan Hawkins is can't miss in that you're going to draft him, and if he stays healthy, you're going to have an 8 to 10 year valuable NBA contributor.
Where did Grayson Allen go in the draft? I guess he went a lot later, didn't he?
I think he was 23. He was like late first round of the Jazz.
Yeah.
Late first round, yeah.
I think he's going to be better than Grayson Allen.
Agreed. Yeah, Kevin Huerter was soaking up major minutes in a playoff series.
The thing about Kevin Huerter, though, Kevin Huerter was a well-rounded player at Maryland.
Sure,
he could pass. He had point guard like skills. He's bigger, stronger. At the same age. Yeah,
I just think that there's an avenue. I mean, Hawkins is a winner too. Yeah. I think that he was 3rd in the entire Big East, which again, I think, in my opinion, was the best conference in basketball, college basketball this year, and he was 3rd in win shares. So when this guy's on the court, he impacts winning. He will find ways to be effective, whether that's turning himself into a better, more rounded offensive player, picking up a little bit more ball handling. He's going to find ways to stick around.
All right. So that wraps up our mock draft. And early next week, we'll be doing picks 15 through 30 with the same crew and hopefully plus Cam. So as always, I want to thank all our listeners, and I want to thank all the guys that contributed today. And it was great having Jackson on for the first time, even if his hat is crooked. If you ever miss an episode, you can always get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. And as I said, we'll be having 2 episodes next week, one early in the week covering picks 15 through 30, and then one toward the end of the week covering picks 31 through 45. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? By the way, is Zion, let me guess who he's dating. It's either a ham or a chocolate cake.
Long story short, Rich, he just announced he's having a baby. And the moment he made the announcement,
I wondered why he put on so much weight.
He made the announcement, and then within like minutes of the announcement being made, a porn star came out and basically was saying how he was seeing her and dating her and promising like this whole life to her. And then another woman came out. So there's like this whole like love square going on with Zion right now. It's yeah. Go on Twitter and type in Zion.
Well, he has time to do that. He has time to do all that, but he doesn't have time to play basketball until he's 100%.
But he's a competitor. Remember, he's such a competitor. He's such a competitor.
It says it right on his commercials. Hey, Zion, if you're listening, which you're not, but if you ever do, I'm tired of you. Already. All right. So, all right. Mini rant's over. Any final words beside Zion's love life?
I think it's an exciting, deep draft as we continue with this first round. You're going to see more and more players that were earlier in the season, top 5, top 10, dropping to in the 20s as far as projection. So I think this makes this draft even more exciting, deeper, fun, interesting, and should be a lot of fun going forward.
And the really interesting thing this year is, for once, when we talk about the guys who aren't getting drafted, which we're going to talk about in our last episode of the mock draft, is a lot of these guys we know we're going to see them on the NBA court next year because every team has an extra two-way slot. So that's exciting. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, thanks for a great show, and we'll see you in a few days.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye, guys. Yeah.